Hi, World History students. This is going to be our first screencast, and we are going to focus on the Neolithic Revolution, which is basically the shift to farming, from hunters and gatherers to farming. The development of agriculture is considered one of the most important turning points in human history because it changed the way many people lived. But first, TBT, let's throw it back to the Paleolithic era. This is about 2.5 million years ago to around 10,000 years ago. I want you to imagine what life is like back then because you cannot just go to the grocery store. Let's talk about food. You're not yourself when you're hungry. Life in the Paleolithic age. People lived as nomads, moving from place to place as they followed migrating animal herds. So they moved together in bands or small groups. This made finding food easier. They relied on the resources around them to survive. For food, people were hunters and gatherers, hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants. Men hunted while women collected plants and cared for the children. Each role was so important to survival, so men and women were most likely equals. I really want you to remember hunters and gatherers, so we're going to have a little dance to go along with me, and it goes something like this. Now watch me hunt, now watch me gather, now watch me hunt, hunt, now watch me gather.
Already know it is. Solid talk, solid talk, solid talk. Don't do it for me. Now watch me whip. Now watch me nay-nay. Now watch me whip. Watch me nay-nay. Why me do it?
If you're watching this in class, hopefully your teacher danced along with you. Their hunt motion should look like a spear, and the gatherer, they're gathering the berries. Again, men were hunters, women were gatherers. Stone Age technology. First tools were chip stones, but over time people learned how to make better tools out of wood, bone, and stone. I want you to predict what types of new tools do you think prehistoric people developed to make survival easier? If you were thinking about hunting tools, you're right. They gradually learned how to make specialized tools like plant fiber to make a net, canoes, bow and arrow, and fishing spears, all to help them hunt. Remember that Paleolithic people that were hunters and gatherers are going to migrate or move, follow their food, which means they're going to be constantly encountering new environments and challenges. So they're going to adapt and develop new tools and new skills. Just like how you're adapting to high school right now. You're developing new skills that you need to learn so you can survive at Mallard Creek. What they're going to do is they're going to learn how to use skins and materials to make clothes, shoes, hats, and bags. They're also going to learn what resources to make shelter out of. Paleolithic people were so good at adapting. They learned how to use tools. They made canoes for travel, made pottery, developed clothing, shelter, and really got good at using fire.
Let there be fire.
Kind of like our friend Sid the Sloth, even though this movie is Ice Age, which is before. With the development of more sophisticated tools, technology, the Paleolithic era gave way to a period called the Neolithic era, or New Stone Age. So in Southwest Asia, this period began as early as 8,000 BC and lasted until 3,000 BC. In other places, the era began much later and lasted much longer. So different parts of the world do not develop the same way in this time. What new tools and technologies did early humans develop during the Neolithic era? Early humans learned to polish and grind stones to shape tools with sharper edges. Tools included chisels, drills, and saws. The beginning of agriculture leads to the Neolithic Revolution. Again, the development of agriculture is one of the most important turning points in human history and significantly changed the way in which people lived. The shift from hunting and gathering to farming is called the Neolithic Revolution. If people are not following animals anymore, what will they be able to do? Will they still be nomads, or will they settle? How did early agriculture develop and spread? I'm so glad you asked. So people gathered grains, the gatherers, and then they began experimenting with planting. They domesticated plants, and then those domesticated plants spread. The climate change led to new plants in certain parts of the world, like wild grains. People gathered grains and noticed that new plants tended to grow where the seeds fell. By experimenting with this, they realized how to farm. It was a gradual process. What is something that you learned that was a gradual process and not right away? Domestication. The selective growing or breeding of plants and animals to make them more useful for humans. So each year, people saved and planted the seeds from the best plants. Growing and domesticating plants provided people with a larger food supply. So go ahead and look at the picture on the left. Do you think that people are going to select the goat that has the smaller horns or the huge wild goat? What about the wheat? Which wheat looks better to you? Remember, domestication is trying to make plants and animals more useful for humans. Before they domesticated plants, prehistoric people had domesticated animals. As with plants, animal domestication required careful selection and breeding of the best animals, like the tamest or most calm, or those that produce the most meat, milk, or wool. What do scientists think was the first animal to be domesticated? Dogs. By 10,000 BC, people in North America and Asia had tamed dogs for hunting and as a guard animal. Hashtag man's best friend. Turn to a partner and tell them about your best friend. By domesticating animals, people could raise livestock to provide a more stable supply of milk, skins, and wool. People used large animals like cattle to help with farming. This provided people with a larger, more reliable food supply. Think about this. How did the domestication of animals help people settle in one place? You take a look at the map and you can pause this to look at the growth of agriculture. Again, different resources developing at different times. It occurred independently in different parts of the world at different times. In the regions where agriculture developed, people domesticated the plants and animals that were available. Those plants and animals gradually spread. Here are some examples. Not everyone transitioned to farming and settling down. Some remained hunters and gatherers because their land was not suited to farming. Farming changes everything. This is a great video. I recommend you check it out. Agriculture really changes society. The world population grows significantly because it provided a larger, more reliable food supply. Some people gave up the nomadic lifestyle and formed settlements. By living in settlements, people could farm and pool their labor and resources. In early farming settlements, people often lived close together in houses made out of different materials like mud bricks, for example. As populations grew, some settlements developed into villages and towns. By 6000 BC, villages and towns of up to several hundred people existed across the world. Everyday life. They worked in fields and tended livestock. People would divide up the work, men, women, and children. Again, with more food available, some people could spend more time doing other activities like making tools. More food meant more trade. Settlements traded with one another to obtain raw materials and products that they didn't have. An example is obsidian. The emergence of social status. Agriculture and trade made societies more complex and prosperous. Differences in social status emerge. Some people gained more wealth and influence. Other people rose to positions of authority, like overseeing the harvest. Religion. Societies began to build structures such as megaliths, these huge stone monuments for religious purposes. You see Neolithic people beginning to worship gods and goddesses associated with animals or elements. There were some negative effects to farming. Warfare, fighting over land and resources. 2, people are dependent on farming, so when bad weather happens, they lose their crops, lose their food supply. And disease. In settlements where people live close together, disease spread more rapidly. This is also because people are in contact with animals.